The throne room was cold, colder than I remembered. The air smelled of damp stone and old incense, and the flickering torchlight cast long shadows that danced like restless spirits. I knelt before the king, my armor creaking with the weight of years I could no longer count. My sword, once a symbol of honor, felt heavy at my side, a reminder of battles fought and comrades lost. "Sir Alaric," the king's voice echoed, sharp and commanding. "The forest of Eldergrove has claimed too many lives. Travelers vanish without a trace, and the villagers whisper of curses. You are the only one I trust to uncover its secrets." I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around the hilt of my sword. Eldergrove. The name alone sent a chill down my spine. I had heard the tales of trees that whispered, of shadows that moved when no one was watching, of a place where time itself seemed to unravel. But it wasn't the forest that frightened me. It was the memories it stirred. The faces of my comrades flashed before my eyes, men and women I had fought beside, laughed with, mourned. Their names were etched in my heart, but their voices were fading, like echoes in a vast, empty hall. I could no longer remember the sound of their laughter, the way they called my name in the heat of battle. The war had taken them, and now, it seemed, it was taking even the memory of them. "Your Majesty," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me, "I will go." The journey to Eldergrove was long and silent. The road grew narrower, the trees taller and darker, until the sunlight was nothing more than a faint glimmer through the canopy. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and then, there it was, the forest. It loomed before me like a living thing, its twisted trees reaching skyward like skeletal fingers. The bark was blackened, as if scorched by some ancient fire, and the leaves shimmered with an unnatural, sickly green light. The wind carried whispers, faint, indistinct, but undeniably there. They tugged at the edges of my mind, like a thread unraveling from a tapestry. I stepped inside, and the world changed. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, though I couldn't make out the words. It was as if the forest itself was speaking, its voice a low guttural hum that vibrated in my bones. And then I felt it. The first tug. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, like the gentle pull of a current beneath still water. But I knew what it was. My memories, the ones I had clung to so desperately, were slipping away. The faces of my comrades blurred, their names dissolving into the void. I reached out, as if I could catch them, hold them close, but they slipped through my fingers like smoke. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. They were no longer just sounds. They were feelings, emotions, fear, regret, longing. They wrapped around me, pulling me deeper into the forest, into the darkness. I gripped my sword tighter, the cold metal grounding me. "I am Sir Alaric," I whispered, more to myself than to the forest. "I am a knight. I am—" But the words faltered. My name felt strange on my tongue, as if it belonged to someone else. The whispers laughed, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. And then, silence. The forest held its breath, waiting. I took another step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers returned, softer now, almost gentle. But I knew better. The forest was alive, and it was hungry. And it had just taken its first bite. The deeper I went, the quieter the world became. The forest swallowed sound, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig beneath my boots. But it wasn't just the silence that unnerved me. It was the emptiness. My thoughts felt hollow, like a room stripped of its furniture. I couldn't remember how long I'd been walking. Hours, days. Time itself seemed to unravel, slipping through my fingers like sand. And then the whispers began. They weren't like the faint murmurs I'd heard at the forest's edge. These were louder, more insistent, as if the forest was trying to tell me something. But the words were garbled, distorted, like a voice speaking underwater. I pressed on, my sword in hand, though I couldn't remember why I was holding it. Was I hunting something? Or was I the one being hunted? The trees grew denser, their gnarled branches twisting together to form a canopy so thick it blotted out the sky. The air was heavy, suffocating, and every breath felt like swallowing smoke. My memories were slipping away, one by one. I could no longer recall the faces of my comrades, the sound of their laughter, the warmth of their camaraderie. All that remained were fragments, a flash of steel, a battle cry, the smell of blood and sweat. But even those were fading, dissolving into the void. I stumbled, my legs buckling beneath me. The ground was soft, spongy, as if the forest itself was alive beneath my feet. I looked up, and that's when I saw them, the shadows. They moved at the edge of my vision, flickering like candle flames. At first, I thought they were tricks of the light. But as I watched, they took shape. Human shapes. They were faint, translucent, like ghosts, but their eyes burned with a cold, hollow light. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. The shadows didn't answer. They simply stared, their expressions blank, their mouths moving as if they were speaking, but no sound came out. I realized then what they were, echoes of those who had come before me, consumed by the forest. Their memories had been devoured, leaving only these hollow shells, wandering aimlessly in the darkness. I turned away, my heart pounding. I couldn't end up like them. I couldn't. But the forest was relentless. It clawed at my mind, tearing away pieces of my past, leaving me disoriented and vulnerable. I clutched my head, trying to hold on to something, anything. But it was no use. The memories slipped away, one by one, until I couldn't even remember why I was here. And then I saw her. She emerged from the shadows like a ghost, her pale skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Her hair was a tangled mess of silver, and her eyes were the color of storm clouds, swirling with emotions I couldn't name. She wore a tattered dress, the fabric frayed and stained, and she carried no weapon, no armor, just herself. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She tilted her head, studying me with those strange, stormy eyes. "I don't know," she said softly. "I don't remember." "You don't remember your name?" She shook her head. "I don't remember anything. Not my name, not where I came from, not why I'm here. But I know this forest. I know how it works, and I know how to stop it." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. She spoke with such certainty, such conviction. But there was something in her voice, a flicker of doubt, of fear. I wanted to trust her, to believe her, but how could I? How could I trust someone who didn't even know herself? "Why should I believe you?" I asked, my voice harsher than I intended. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto mine. "Because you don't have a choice," she said. "The forest is eating you alive. If you stay here, you'll end up like them." She gestured to the shadows, still flickering at the edge of my vision. "I can help you, but you have to trust me." I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. My head was spinning, my thoughts fragmented. I couldn't remember why I was here, what I was fighting for. All I knew was that I was losing myself, piece by piece, and she was the only one who offered a way out. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Lira," she said. "At least that's what I call myself. It's as good a name as any." Lira. The name echoed in my mind, a small anchor in the chaos. I nodded, though I wasn't sure why. "Lead the way," I said. She turned and began to walk, her movements graceful, almost ethereal. I followed, my sword still in hand, though I couldn't remember why I was holding it. The forest pressed in around us, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. I glanced at Lira, her silver hair catching the faint light, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. But it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. Who was she, really? And why did she know so much about this cursed place? The questions gnawed at me, but I had no answers. All I knew was that the forest was hungry, and it was coming for me. The deeper we went, the heavier the air became. It wasn't just the weight of the forest pressing down on me. It was the weight of my own mind. Memories I had buried long ago began to surface, unbidden, like ghosts rising from a grave. Flashes of battlefields, the clash of steel, the screams of the dying, faces I couldn't name, voices I couldn't place. They haunted me, flickering at the edges of my vision, whispering in my ear. Lira walked ahead, her silver hair catching the faint, sickly light that filtered through the canopy. She moved with purpose, her steps sure and steady, as if she knew this place intimately. But every now and then she would pause, her storm cloud eyes distant, as if she too were wrestling with something unseen. "Do you remember anything?" I asked, my voice hoarse. The forest seemed to sap my strength with every step, leaving me breathless and hollow. She glanced back at me, her expression unreadable. "Fragments," she said, "like shards of glass. I can't piece them together, but I know they're there. A voice, a face, a feeling. But every time I try to hold on to them, they slip away." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I knew that feeling all too well. The forest was a thief, stealing pieces of us, leaving us fractured and incomplete. But it wasn't just taking our memories, it was twisting them, turning them against us. As if on cue, the forest shifted. The trees seemed to lean closer, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The ground beneath my feet grew soft, unstable, as if it might give way at any moment. And then I saw them, the creatures. They emerged from the shadows, their forms shifting and writhing, as if they were made of smoke and shadow. But they weren't shapeless. They had faces, faces I recognized, my comrades, my friends. Their eyes were hollow, their mouths twisted into grotesque smiles. They reached out to me, their fingers elongating into claws, their voices a cacophony of whispers and screams. "Alaric!" they called, their voices echoing in my mind. "You left us. You failed us." I stumbled back, my sword trembling in my hand. "No," I whispered. "This isn't real. You're not real." But they were. They were as real as the guilt that gnawed at my soul. The forest was feeding on it, using it to weaken me, to break me. I swung my sword, the blade cutting through the air, but it passed through them as if they were made of mist. They laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine and closed in around me. "Alaric!" Lyra's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Don't listen to them. They're not your friends. They're just echoes, shadows of what the forest has taken." I turned to her, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "How do I fight them?" I asked, my voice desperate. "You don't," she said, her eyes blazing with intensity. "You fight yourself. The forest is feeding on your guilt, your regrets. You have to let them go. Let them go." The words echoed in my mind, but they felt impossible. How could I let go of the faces, the voices, the lives I had failed to save? They were a part of me, etched into my very soul. But as I looked at Lira, at the determination in her eyes, I realized I had no choice. If I didn't let go, the forest would consume me, just as it had consumed so many others. I closed my eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. I focused on the weight of my sword in my hand, the feel of the ground beneath my feet, the sound of Lyra's voice. And then, I let go. I released the guilt, the regret, the pain. I let them slip away, like leaves carried off by the wind. When I opened my eyes, the creatures were gone. The forest was silent, the air still and heavy, but the relief was short-lived. Ahead, the trees parted, revealing a clearing bathed in an eerie, pulsating light. At its center stood a massive, twisted tree, its bark blackened and cracked, its branches reaching skyward like claws. The air around it shimmered, distorted, as if reality itself was bending to its will. "The heart," Lira whispered, her voice trembling. "This is where it ends." I nodded, my grip tightening on my sword. But as we stepped into the clearing, the forest shifted again. The ground trembled, the air grew thick, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall, towering, its form shifting and changing as if it were made of the memories it had stolen. Its eyes burned with a cold, hollow light, and its voice was a low, guttural growl. "Alaric," it said, its voice echoing in my mind. "You cannot escape me. I am your guilt. I am your regret. I am your darkest memory." I froze, my sword trembling in my hand. The figure stepped closer, its form solidifying, and I realized with a sickening jolt that it wasn't just a monster, it was me. My face twisted and distorted, my armor blackened and cracked, my eyes hollow and empty. It was a reflection of everything I feared, everything I hated about myself. "You cannot defeat me," it said, its voice a low, guttural growl. "I am you." I looked at Lira, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She met my gaze, her storm cloud eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "You face it," she said. "You face yourself." I turned back to the figure, my sword trembling in my hand. The forest was silent, the air heavy with anticipation. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest, and stepped forward. The battle wasn't with the forest. It wasn't with the monsters or the shadows. It was with myself, and I wasn't sure if I could win. The heart of the forest was a nightmare made real. The air was thick, suffocating, and the ground pulsed beneath my feet as if the earth itself was alive. The massive twisted tree loomed before us, its blackened bark cracked and oozing with a sickly glowing sap. Its branches writhed like serpents, and its roots coiled and uncoiled, digging deeper into the earth, the forest's core, the source of its hunger. But it wasn't the tree that held my attention. It was Lira. She stood a few paces ahead of me, her silver hair catching the eerie light that emanated from the tree. Her back was to me, her shoulders tense, her hands clenched into fists. She had been quiet since we entered the clearing, her usual confidence replaced by a strange, almost fragile stillness. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, but the words caught in my throat. Something about her felt different. "Lira," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on?" She didn't answer at first. She just stood there, her head tilted slightly, as if she were listening to something I couldn't hear. And then, slowly, she turned to face me. Her eyes were different. The storm cloud gray I had grown accustomed to was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow light that sent a shiver down my spine. Her expression was blank, unreadable, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of fear. "Lira?" I said again, my voice trembling. She smiled, but it wasn't her smile. It was too sharp, too cruel. "I'm sorry, Alaric," she said, her voice soft but laced with something dark, something ancient. "I didn't want you to find out this way." "Find out what?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. She took a step toward me, her movements unnaturally smooth, almost predatory. "I'm not who you think I am," she said. "I'm not a traveler, or a victim, or a guide. I'm a part of this place, a fragment of the forest. I was created to lure you here, to feed you to the heart." Her words hit me like a blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I stumbled back, my sword slipping from my grasp and clattering to the ground. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible. You helped me. You saved me." "I did," she said, her voice softening. "But not because I wanted to. At first I was just following the forest's will, but something changed. I started to feel, to think, to remember. And I realized I didn't want to be its puppet anymore. I wanted to be free. I stared at her, my mind reeling. The girl I had trusted, the girl I had fought beside, was a creation of the forest, a tool, a weapon. But she was also more than that. She was Lira, and she had saved me, not because she had to, but because she chose to. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because we're running out of time," she said, her eyes flicking to the pulsating tree behind her. "The forest is growing stronger. It's feeding on your memories, your guilt, your regrets. And if we don't stop it soon, it will consume everything. You, me, the world." "How do we stop it?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. She hesitated, her storm cloud eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "The heart is vulnerable," she said, "but only for a moment. If we strike it at the right time, we can destroy it. But it will cost you everything." "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "You have to sacrifice your memories," she said. "All of them. The forest feeds on them, uses them to sustain itself. If you let them go, if you give them up willingly, it will weaken the heart. And then I can destroy it." I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. My memories, my past, my identity, they were all I had left. Without them, who would I be? A shell? A shadow? But if I didn't do this, the forest would continue to feed, to grow, to consume. It would take everything, not just from me, but from everyone. "I don't know if I can do this," I said, my voice trembling. She stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch my arm. Her touch was warm, real, and for a moment I forgot that she wasn't human. "You're stronger than you think," she said. "You've already faced so much. You can face this too." I looked into her eyes, searching for the truth, for the girl I had come to trust. And I found her. She was still there, beneath the cold, hollow light, beneath the forest's influence. She was still Lira. "What about you?" I asked. "What happens to you if we do this?" She smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile. "I don't know," she said. "But it doesn't matter. What matters is stopping the forest, saving the world." I nodded, though my heart ached. She was right. This wasn't about us. It was about something bigger, something more important. "All right," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Let's do this." She nodded, her storm cloud eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "When the time comes," she said, "you'll know what to do." I turned to face the heart of the forest, the massive, twisted tree pulsating with a sickly light. The air grew heavier, the whispers louder, and I felt the first tug of my memories slipping away. But this time, I didn't fight it. I let them go, one by one, until all that remained was the present, the moment, the choice. And then I stepped forward, ready to face the end. The heart of the forest was alive. It pulsed like a monstrous, diseased organ, its blackened bark splitting and oozing with a sickly, glowing sap. The air around it shimmered, distorted, as if reality itself was unraveling. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices, some pleading, some screaming, some laughing. They clawed at my mind, tearing at the last fragments of who I was. I stood at the edge of the clearing, my sword heavy in my hand, though I couldn't remember why I was holding it. My name, my past, my purpose. They were slipping away piece by piece, like sand through an hourglass. But I couldn't let go, not yet, not until it was done. Lira stood beside me, her silver hair glowing faintly in the eerie light. Her storm cloud eyes were fixed on the heart of the forest, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. She had told me what to do, but the weight of it pressed down on me like a mountain. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I was. How could anyone be ready for this? To give up everything, your memories, your identity, your very self, for a chance to save the world? But I didn't have a choice. The forest was growing stronger, its hunger insatiable. If I didn't do this, it would consume everything. "When you let go," Lira said, her voice trembling slightly, "the heart will weaken. That's when I'll strike, but you have to hold on until then. You have to stay strong." I looked at her, my heart aching. She was still Lira, the girl who had guided me, fought beside me, saved me. But she was also something more, something I couldn't fully understand. And soon, she would be gone. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "But promise me one thing." She tilted her head, her storm cloud eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "What?" "Don't let me forget you," I said. She smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile. "I won't," she said. "I promise." I turned to face the heart of the forest, the massive, twisted tree pulsating with a sickly light. The air grew heavier, the whispers louder, and I felt the first tug of my memories slipping away. But this time I didn't fight it. I let them go one by one, until all that remained was the present, the moment, the choice. The forest screamed, the ground trembled, the air grew thick, and the heart of the forest pulsed with a blinding light. The whispers turned to screams, the shadows to flames, and I felt the weight of the forest's hunger pressing down on me, trying to crush me, to consume me. But I held on. I held on to the memory of Lira, to the promise she had made. I held on to the hope that this would work, that we could save the world. And then, I let go. The world exploded in light. The heart of the forest pulsed once, twice, and then began to collapse, its blackened bark cracking and splintering, its glowing sap spilling onto the ground. The air grew still, the whispers faded, and the forest began to unravel. I fell to my knees, my sword slipping from my grasp. My mind was empty, hollow like a room stripped of its furniture. I couldn't remember my name, my past, my purpose, but I remembered her. Lira. I turned to look at her, my heart pounding in my chest. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. Her storm cloud eyes were filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve, and for a moment I thought she would stay. But then she began to fade. "Lira," I called, my voice trembling. She smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile. "It's done," she said. "The forest is gone. The world is safe." "But what about you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head, her storm cloud eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "I'm a part of the forest," she said, "and now the forest is gone." I looked at her, my heart aching. She was still Lira, the girl who had guided me, fought beside me, saved me. But she was also something more, something I couldn't fully understand. And soon, she would be gone. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "But promise me one thing." She tilted her head, her storm cloud eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "What?" "Don't let me forget you," I said. She smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile. "I won't," she said. "I promise." I turned to face the heart of the forest, the massive, twisted tree pulsating with a sickly light. The air grew heavier, the whispers louder, and I felt the first tug of my memories slipping away. But this time I didn't fight it. I let them go one by one, until all that remained was the present, the moment, the choice. The forest screamed, the ground trembled, the air grew thick, and the heart of the forest pulsed with a blinding light. The whispers turned to screams, the shadows to flames, and I felt the weight of the forest's hunger pressing down on me, trying to crush me, to consume me. But I held on. I held on to the memory of Lira, to the promise she had made. I held on to the hope that this would work, that we could save the world. And then, I let go. The world exploded in light. The heart of the forest pulsed once, twice, and then began to collapse, its blackened bark cracking and splintering, its glowing sap spilling onto the ground. The air grew still, the whispers faded, and the forest began to unravel. I fell to my knees, my sword slipping from my grasp. My mind was empty, hollow like a room stripped of its furniture. I couldn't remember my name, my past, my purpose, but I remembered her, Lira. I turned to look at her, my heart pounding in my chest. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. Her storm cloud eyes were filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve, and for a moment I thought she would stay. But then she began to fade. "Lira," I called, my voice trembling. She smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile. "It's done," she said. "The forest is gone. The world is safe." "But what about you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head, her storm cloud eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "I'm a part of the forest," she said, "and now the forest is gone." "No," I said, my voice trembling. "You're more than that. You're Lira." She smiled, a sad, bittersweet smile. "Thank you," she said, "for remembering me." And then she was gone. The clearing was silent, the air still and heavy. The heart of the forest was gone, the massive, twisted tree reduced to ash and dust. The forest was gone, the whispers silenced, the shadows banished. But I was still here, and I remembered her. I stood, my legs trembling beneath me, and looked around. The forest was gone, the trees reduced to ash and dust. The air was still, the whispers silenced, the shadows banished. But I was still here, and I remembered her. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, glowing shard of memory. It was her, Lira. Her silver hair, her storm cloud eyes, her sad, bittersweet smile. It was all I had left of her, but it was enough. I held the shard close to my heart, a reminder of the girl who had helped me save the world. And then I turned and walked away, into the light.